Now let's take a look at the interface of Maya as a whole. So let's go ahead and open this up. Starting again with just a blank scene, we're really just going to be talking about the interface itself. So let's kind of start at the top and kind of work our way around. So at the very top, you'll see that there are our menus. So basically just text that we can click on and access different functions and tools of Maya. You can see this particular set of menus involves meshes, normals, UVs, and things like that. Now, as I kind of open this up, for instance, if I open up the mesh menu, you'll see this little dotted line up at the top. If I want to pull this off, I can just click on this little dotted line and it makes it a separate window. Then I can move this wherever I want, off of my screen if I want to, off of my Maya screen onto another monitor perhaps, and access tools that way so that I don't have to constantly go back in and open up particular menus. Now, these menus and what these are will change based on the menu set that we have selected. Now, the menu set is actually on the next line, and that next line is called the status line. And so that's going to be right here, going all the way across to the right. So right here you can see that this little drop down is set to polygons. So that's our polygon menu set. If I change this to animation, let's say, you can see that a number of these menus change up on the top. There are some that stay the same throughout any of our menu sets: File, Edit, Modify, Create, Display, Window, and Assets. But the rest of them change and are dynamic based on the menu set that we've selected. So we have tools here under Surfaces that we don't have access to under the Polygons menu set. They're specific to NURB surfaces, or they're specific to animation in this case because we've selected the animation menu set. So you want to make sure that you're in the correct menu set for what it is you want to be able to use here. Now let's move across the status line. So here we have some shortcuts for some of the common file kind of functions, creating new scenes, opening scenes, and you can see as I hover over those icons, we get little indicators of what those actually do, along with any hotkeys that are associated with those. For instance, here I can save the scene using Control S. You can see these little dividers here. Some of them have little arrows and some of them are just straight lines. The straight lines indicate that we are viewing whatever section it is that we're looking at here. The arrow indicates that there's something in here that we can expand. So as we come across these three icons give us the ability to select based on either the object, component type, or hierarchy. You can see here we can use selection masks to kind of figure out what kind of components we want to be able to select. The next section has to do with snapping. You can tell that based on the magnets. Okay, so we can snap to different parts of the scene. If I come over here, you can see we can come in and say we can look at the inputs or outputs for a particular object along with the history. So everything in Maya is a node that has inputs and outputs going in and out. The next section has to do with the rendering. So the clapboard here, we can open the render views, we can do IPR renders, open the render settings, and so forth. And then all the way to the right-hand side, we can open up some different interfaces. So we can open up the modeling toolkit, which is kind of a specific modeling-based interface. We can open the attribute editor. We can open up the tool settings and so forth. Channel box here. So this enables us to kind of view and hide different aspects of our interface that we would use more often. Down below this is the shelf. This is basically just a series of tabs or shelves here that are specific, and you can create your own. You can see here's already a custom one that's empty, but it enables us to take things that we do a lot and kind of save those into our own shelf. So if there are a few tools that you use quite a bit, you can save those onto a particular shelf and then you have access to them very quickly. You can come in here and edit your shelves. You can navigate through the shelves. Okay, we can select a particular shelf through here, or we can choose the tabs up at the top. We talked about our 3D view. There is a panel toolbar right here on any of our panels that will enable us to kind of choose very specific things for that particular panel. It doesn't have to be a viewport, it can be any kind of panel. Over here to the right is our channel box. Now a channel box, if I bring in a piece of geometry, the channel box is going to give us the name of that object. It's going to give us any transforms on here based on the coordinates. So we've got a little bit of translation here in the X, Y, and Z. This is basically just movement So if I move this, you can see it reflected here. We'll talk more about transforming objects in a later lesson. You can see there's no rotation currently on this object, and there's no scaling because the scaling is set to 1, which is full scale. We can also come down here and access creation parameters for our particular object. We can see any history that exists on the object. Anywhere you see these little dotted lines, we can kind of move parts of the interface around. Okay, same thing here. I can kind of move this around. Down here we've got layers, and so we can work with display layers or render layers. It's just a way of organizing our objects into different groups that we can turn off and on the visibility. As we come down to the bottom, we can see our animation controls. So we've got kind of our time slider and range slider, our playback controls, our animation settings in here. So anything that's related to sort of playback and animation can be found down here. Then we've got down here at the bottom is the command line, and there's an area over to the left where you can input mel commands. So it's basically just kind of Maya's language that you can use, and we'll talk about that again later. And then also you get feedback over here on the right hand side, and if you want to open up the script editor, we can hit that little button, and it kind of gives you a play-by-play in that scripting of what's going on in our scene. So anytime we do anything, it shows up in here. So you can see this command is what that move translated to. Over here to the left, we've got the quick layout button. So if I can come in here and quickly create new layouts, you can see this one has our viewport here, but then it also has a listing of our objects in here as well. And so we can customize those and go to any sort of panel that we want and make that split view. So, depending on what it is we're doing in Maya, we can really create a workspace that fits what we're trying to do. All right. Moving up, we have the toolbox. This allows us to choose translate, rotate, move. We can also choose selection types in here. The last tool used. If we double click on any of these, we can bring up our tool settings and change the way that those tools behave. Those are also accessed via hotkeys, which we'll talk about as we start to transform objects around, but that's located over here on the left. Okay, so that's pretty much it on the interface. There are things that we can bring up. For instance, the attribute editor that we talked about, it can be important. It basically lets us view attributes of particular objects. So if I select this and I either click on this button here, it brings up that object's attributes. We can drag it off by clicking on the little dotted line there, close it out. We can also hit Control-A to bring up that attribute editor as well. And that's going to be an important part of the interface. And there are other parts of the interface that we'll talk about as we go through this process. The things like the UV texture editor, the outliner, the hypershade. These are all going to be important parts of working in Maya, and we will talk about those as we go through the process of getting up to speed here in Maya. So in the next lesson, let's talk about creating a Maya project. That's how Maya organizes all of its folders, keeps all of the assets together, and allows you to have a nice package for your projects as you work in Maya. So we'll talk about how to set that up next.